So welcome everybody to the Oregon State University Permaculture Design Pro class. This is the Spring and Summer 2024 class. It's a pleasure to have you all here. My name is Javan Bernakevitch. I'll be your instructor and grader, primary instructor and grader for the course. We will be meeting here on Mondays every other week. So next week will be your first assignment or first week of assignments that are due, and then we'll meet again the next week and so on throughout the summer, because you guys are this great spring and summer course. We'll have a small break in June, and then we'll come back in July. And this time is a great time to ask any question you like under the sun. So you name it, it's fair game. I'm just going to put our question and answer document into the chat. So this is a great place to put in your questions beforehand, especially if it's a big question you want me to think about it a little bit. I usually need a little bit of time to have some precognition on it. And we'll get into specifically how to do that in a second. Yeah, so first off, my introduction. My name is Javan. I've been working in permaculture since 2009 when I took my first PDC, and have been very blessed in my career, mostly because I worked a lot for free at the beginning. So one thing I can say is if you show up to people with a lot of value and skill and you're saying, hey, I'll pull weeds, chances are they will hire you for $0, and you will get a chance to learn about that process from them, which is excellent. And that led to a number of great opportunities. I had the opportunity to travel to Cuba, and I worked with Ron Barzan, the urbanfarmer.ca, and we went and took on average 12 to 18 students from around the world, and we had a 21-day traveling permaculture design course where we went to 3 different cities, and then we eventually designed and installed something at the end of the course. I also had an opportunity to go with Seven Ravens Permaculture Farm and Academy. We ran a 3-month permaculture design course that was residential at Michael Nichols Farm on Salt Spring Island in British Columbia, Canada. And we would teach in the mornings, we would go work in the fields in the afternoon. And then we went to Kenya and Uganda back in 2013 to develop the Practical Permaculture Institutes of Western Africa, which was a fascinating project, and was so successful in Kenya that there's one in Tanzania, one's in Zanzibar, and an informal one in Uganda right now. And over time, I was able to interact with more people. I started to present more about what I did and what I was good at, because at the beginning, you're not good at very much. It takes a long time to get good at anything. And was able to present more and more and have people understand what I was doing, and that I had a specialty. I had and have a big love of doing broad scale, large landscape design and installation. I've been hired many times by colleagues because I'm the technical land designer, because I really focus on the technical aspects. I do calculations to understand if we have enough water, but I also read the landscape. I also enter into a relationship with the landscape when I land on it. I don't try to force function my ideas onto it or lean on science solely. We are fully sensory beings, and we need to be fully present on a site to understand it. So while this is an online course and you will generally be interacting with me via your template, which I'll get into in a second, I really want you to develop your permaculture lens, your permaculture goggles, and the permaculture sense of being present in the place you are at. Over the years, I started to develop an appreciation for decision-making, because I had worked with Alan Savory's great work of holistic management, and found that while he wrote a great book for holistic management and for grazers, for the rest of us, it was all Greek. So I started to develop a way of creating values-based decisions, and that became a primary way that I interacted with clients, and still do. I consider myself a lowercase p permaculturalist. I'm not a permaculturalist. I'm not. That's not the only tool in my toolbox. I'm a regenerative land designer. I have a lot of tools in my toolbox. I'm really excited to share any of them if you'd like to know about them during these office hours. Because I'm a teacher of permaculture, during the course, I'm going to be teaching about permaculture and talking about it. But during these office hours, you guys get to ask anything you like. Anything's fair game. One thing I want to let everybody know, because this may be the first time you've been in a course offered by a university in a long time, or the first time ever. I am not a university instructor in the way that grades are an almighty thing to me. I I use grades to help guide you to the right answer. So technically, if you bring me an assignment that doesn't adhere to the rubric or doesn't adhere to what I'd like to see, I'll let you know that in video feedback. And I'll say you have to fix these things. And then basically you'll resubmit indicating what you fixed, and I'll give you full marks. I'm happy to give everybody full marks. I don't care about the curve or anything like that. I want you guys to do really well, but really think that this is a course about progression. You're going to slowly progress into an idea of being in a state of looking at the opportunities, of looking at landscape as energy flows. There's a student in another course. So we run the same course overlapping of each other. So we're halfway in the course we just started 3 months ago. We're starting with you, and they always overlap. And there's this incredible, I think is a biology, PhD biology instructor at a university in Colombia. And he said, I finally sat down to design this piece of land, and I'm clear in my head because of all of the long, thoughtful, and protracted observation we've done over the last 3 months. We don't do a lot of design for the first 3 months. We do a lot of observation. What are we seeing? What are we feeling? What are we understanding? And his approach is really about progressing and getting those permaculture goggles on. I want to introduce you folks all to the template. This was my brainchild of a couple years ago, and it's what I wish I had when I started permaculture in 2009. It's an easy and simple way to take a look at and understand a site by taking all that information and putting it into a scaffolding or putting it into a closet or a mechanic's roll top tool case. It's really about putting it into a specific order. Now, because this is a course, this template is really about both learning and me understanding what you've learned, and also deliverables for a client. So one of the questions we have at the end of the course is, would we give all of this to a client? No. And we can talk about that if anybody has questions, but this is really about you developing an understanding of your site and showing me you can, and then me helping to guide your designer's mind. So just as a quick tour, you'll find that there's blue highlighted content, and all that blue highlighted content is suggestions or directions. Anything that's yellow highlighted is something for you to input, and then before you submit, to remove the yellow highlighting. And at the top, you're going to have all of the tutorials. So I've done many hours of video tutorials. I apologize. You're going to hear a lot of my voice. But the great thing is that you can speed up the playback, so you don't have to listen to me for too long. But if you're brand new to Google Slides, these tutorials will help you to learn how to use Google Slides, how to navigate, how to move things in and out. It'll be a lifesaver to really develop your comprehension about Google Slides. If you don't like developing maps digitally and you'd rather hand draw your maps, please do. This is not a course about rendering, but I like to impart everything I know. And the reason we use Google Slides is it's free, it's accessible, and generally anybody can use it. If you're dealing with low bandwidth, chances are you'll probably want to make sure that you can access this offline by going into Google Drive and then using the Chrome browser, so that way you can work offline and then have it sync when you do have internet. Or you can completely take this offline. You can download this into PowerPoint. You can download it into OpenOffice or Keynote. There will be some changes. So just know that if you decide to not work with the software we're working with, there will be some changes and you'll have to do some work. Recently, folks have been using Canva as an online video editor or a graphic editor. It's okay. It's not great. I don't think it improves much upon what we have here. And I think a lot of the formatting changes you have to make doesn't make up for the fact that it does have layers. And that's the one thing that Google Slides does not have that would be very useful. So basically, this is the format that you'll see. You'll see blue highlighted text. That text allows us to give information about what you should look at. Generally, before you submit, make sure to remove all of that. And then basically, you're going to walk through each of these assignments and then be conscientious that you submit all your assignments on the day that they're due, not just the first one or the second one, or do it piecemeal. Really make sure all your assignments are done and then submit. And the way that we submit, so just so that way everybody's very clear about the conversation, I'm just going to stop share and we're going to go back over to Chrome. So that way we can take a look at our group here and orient to that as well. The way that we submit and the way we navigate is through our group discussion page. So this is our group discussion page, and I'll just put this into the chat here quick. So that way, if any, your voice already feels familiar, I apologize for that. That's too bad. So if anybody needs this, this is definitely a link to, in the chat here, this is definitely a good link to bookmark. This is our discussion page. Start here for tips and tricks. This is the email that I sent out last week. So these are all the tips and tricks I've learned about how students can make really good templates, really good portfolios, and make good use of their time here with OSU. The next is our office hour details. So you'll see here, and if you're here, you probably already read this. So this is our George Cow's etiquette for Zoom meetings. I like seeing people's faces. It's great for me. If it doesn't work for you, that's totally fine. But it does feel more like I'm not talking into the void, which is great. Our Google document, which we have seen a little bit of, but just clicking on here. So this is our Google document. I've put this here because for the last couple of classes, somehow people are missing the fact that all assignments are due on the final due date. Up until that time, you've got leeway. You can definitely submit late. Generally, if you're over 2 weeks late, I will always mark, but you may not get the detailed feedback that you're accustomed to. But August 26th, 2024, 9 a.m. PST, all assignments and resubmissions are due. So great time to put that into your calendars right now. Then we've got our Zoom information. And then this is generally how I'd like you to format your questions. So your name, where you're from, and then a link to your portfolio. Now, for this class, I haven't seen any questions, but for this class, you probably wouldn't do that. But for next class, our next office hour, you definitely want to do that. And then put in your question. And you'll see here, and you'll see some tutorials within the template. I talk a lot about bolded highlighting. Bolded highlighting is a great way if you're working with clients to bring their attention to what's important, and I really appreciate it. Below here, we've got my master resource list that I've been compiling for 15 years, and it includes resources by topic, so you can go through that: plant identification, seed saving, patterns, urban permaculture, water, you name it. I'm just starting this new documentaries tab, so that's new. Podcasts, got a great list of podcasts. This was a failed sheet that should have been rolled into the resources. And then plant ID. So this is my working document. This is what I use. This is for me that I'm just sharing with all of you. So if you don't like my format, that's fine. Don't use it. But it's one of those things I like to share. I like to give everybody the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, so that way you guys can start a lot further ahead than I did, because I had to gather a lot of things as I went around. There's 2 apps I highly recommend. One is GPS Kit if you're on iOS, which is Apple. The other is Gaia GPS if you're on Android. And the reason I like these is they take photos that are geo-referenced. And I love using Google Earth Pro as a free desktop application to help me design and understand a site. If you don't like using those, this won't make any sense to you. But I like going, and when I go on site visits, I like taking photos and then geo-referencing them within Google Earth Pro. So this is really useful. For a lot of you, as it was for me as well, plant ID will not come easily, or you will have no background. I was raised in the city. I was raised on McDonald's. I was raised on, thank God it's Friday night, television. So for me, I've had to learn a lot of what is in this world of permaculture. I really hear you when you're saying you're struggling, because I still struggle. I had 3 head accidents over the last 15 years, and I lost a lot of information that I had to relearn. So I've got an entire tutorial about how to go about and figure out plant ID, but here's some quick ones. These are some of the more common books that people ask about, so I've put those in there, and we can come back to them at a time. Then some recent videos that folks have asked about. I also run a educational platform called Regenerative Living to learn practical skills to live on the planet as if we intend to stay. And this is really an extension of this desire to help people level up quickly. So you'll see down here, I've been developing courses with a number of exceptional practitioners over the years. Just coming up here on Wednesday, we're starting a new hedgerow course with Jude Hobbs, who's been at hedgerow design for 25 years. We just recently finished aesthetic design. Aesthetic design was not something I was good at for years and had to learn. And I wish I had Jamie's expertise in this course early. So this is just a number of in-depth courses. What you'll find is that this permaculture design course is a buffet. It's an introductory course. You get a lot of a lot of a little. You get a little of a lot of things. And at the end of it, you really have to ask yourself as you're walking back to the buffet, what do I want to put on my plate now? What's exciting me? Do I want to work broad scale, small scale? Do I like working with groups or individuals? Do I want to specialize in rainwater harvesting or composting toilets or any of these specifics? Do I want to create product instead of being in a service in terms of design? Do I want to do compost agroforestry like Mark Krawczyk and grow mushrooms? So there's a number of courses here that may or may not be to your liking, and you may or may not want to add on to this course. Every once in a while, I get a few students who are like, I have to take that course now, which is great. You don't need to whatsoever. I just want you to know that it's there as a resource. And then this course is coming up on the 10th. And then this is a brilliant course. If you want a deep dive course into soils that doesn't cost $3,000, as a lot of Elaine Ingram's courses do, this is great. This is taught by my good friend, Jo Tobias. She runs an excellent microscopy company, which is basically looking at soil under a microscope and understanding what the constituent organisms are and how to increase them to increase fertility. And then we get into our office hour Zoom dates. If you've never used Google Slides before, you'll see this little show document outline. And this is a quick way to navigate to any of the dates that we have coming up. So this is April 8th. So I put a bunch of notes in here for myself. And then if any of you ever had a question, you would just put it at the bottom of whoever has posted in here for me. For today, it's my notes, but for anybody else, it's there. And then similarly underneath, you'll notice that I've made it very clear when our final due date is. And the reason for that is I don't want you to miss out on it. We had 4 students that somehow missed it last semester, and now they have to re-enroll in the course. It's not worth it to miss that final due date. So that's the Google document. Any questions about the Google document as we're going throughout this? Any thoughts about what's there or how to use it or anything under the sun? Feel free to either unmute yourself or put your question in the chat. Either or.
Hi, Javan. I have one question.
Please.
So I know you, if you go back to the document, you listed a couple as like websites, apps, platforms for Plant ID, but you also said there was a tutorial. Is that okay? Yeah.
So going back to the template, when we get to Plant ID, which is assignment, I think we start in microclimates, starting to take a look at plants. Let me just find this here, Plant ID. Great question. I talked a good game and then basically lost it.
No, all good. I just also was raised not really knowing anything about plants, but my uncle's a botanist, and whenever we go on walks, I'm kind of jealous that he knows exactly what we're looking at, and I don't. So it's just something I want to dive deeper into if there's a tutorial.
Yeah, there really is. And let me just take a quick boo through the master here. I should be able to find it pretty quickly. Basement. How to ID plant, slide 53. Okay. So it's a good thing I have a little bit of OCD in me because I end up doing a lot more than I would normally do. So on slide, it looks like 53, or is it on 54? Okay, yeah, so on slide 54, so I'm just gonna share screen here. So on slide 54 of the template, there's how to ID plants. And this is basically my approach, how I've gone about it. The long and the short of it is, and I say this with as much love and grace as I can because I am not good at identifying plants, and it's taken me a long time to get to where I'm at, is to have fun with it and to start with plants you like. So generally, when I started, I had an instructor who's now become one of my best friends, Brandon Bauer of Entelechy Nursery. And Brandon left Cleveland University. He dropped out of university. He was homeless on Orcas Island, and he was guerrilla gardening to feed himself so that way he could run odd jobs, make him enough money so he could spend the $2,000 to take the Bullock Brothers permaculture design course, which at that time on the West Coast was the premier PDC to take. And when I met Brandon Brandon had delved so deeply into plants that he could tell you the plant, the common name, the Latin name, how it was propagated, its genetic lineage, and generally how it should be cared for, which is super intimidating as a first-time student. I can say I'm still not at that level 15 years later. It's just not the way my brain works. But what I did is I started to date a plant every year. So I took one plant that I was super curious about and I just learned about it. And generally, I would try to grow it. I would do a press of it in a press book. I would take a look at its identifying factors. And then I started to learn more about different types of factors of plants. So generally, when we're observing plants, when we raise our awareness of plants, you'll see that certain families and certain functionalities of plants have certain types of forms and function. And the best book I can recommend for this is Botany in a Day by Thomas Elpel, E-P-E-L, Elpel. It was a brilliant book because Thomas was like me. He wasn't really good at identifying plants. And so he literally wrote a book for himself. And when I had a chance to meet him years ago at Rabbit Stick, which is this ancestral skills gathering down in Idaho, I was like, I love your book, but why are there asterisks or two asterisks besides these different titles? He goes, oh, those are for me. Those are some of the plants that I still have to learn better. Like he wrote a book and published it for the rest of us, but that book is still for him, which is an amazing piece to pick up that we're all learning and we're all trying to develop our comprehension. So in that book, I learned things like mint has a square stem and it has opposite leaves. I learned things like most nitrogen fixers have opposite but multitude of leaves. And generally they'll have specific types of root nodules and specific types of beans and peas and things like that. So generally I would say, if you're interested, pick up that book. It's a great primer to start you off. And then as you're starting to learn about plants, pick a plant that you like, a flower, food producing plant, ornamental, nectar flow, fiber. I've worked with a lot of fiber artists who've come to the permaculture design course and they work in fiber, which is brilliant. And they've developed a great love of fiber plants. And so have I, by starting to understand some of the dye plants and fiber plants and things of that nature. So pick a plant, and I would say for the first month, get to know it. Identify it, start to research it, start to understand what kind of plant it is. How can you identify it? What's its Latin? How do you propagate it? All those good things. And then depending on where you are and what your climate is, as we're getting into spring, if you're in temperate climates, and if you're in tropics, you can pretty much plant all the time. Start to plant it, find a seed, find a cutting, find a way that it propagates and start to work in that way. So I would say approach that way. And then if there are plants you don't know, some of the apps are quite good. Google Lens is remarkably better than it has been ever before, sometimes outstripping some of the paid for plant ID applications. Or I still like posting in Reddit groups and Facebook groups. So there's a plant group down here in Ecuador, which is where I am. And I was driving by in the city of Cuenca, which is near me. I was driving by and I saw this beautiful blue flower, great hedging plant. And I took a quick photo. We stopped longer, took another, like got as quick as I could, put it into the group. And I said, does anybody know what this is? And I think within an hour, I had 4 answers that all confirmed each other. I looked it up myself, confirmed it for myself. And I also had 3 offers to purchase it. There's a lot of entrepreneurship down here. So those groups can be great ways of interacting with each other. So yeah. How do you say your name? Aneka?
Aneka.
Aneka. Aneka. Okay, gotcha. Beautiful. So that's how I
Thanks.
would approach it. And then, yeah, take a look on slide 54 for that plant ID. I think that'll help.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Great question. Okay. Any other questions before we mosey back on over to our discussion page? Okay, cool. So that was the wrong one. Let's go to Chrome. If anyone hasn't found this yet, Canvas works really well in Chrome, less so in other applications. I know Chrome is a RAM hog on computers, so it's just the way it is. I had to switch to. Again, these are our dates. Definitely put the dates in your calendar. Generally, we have lots of students at the beginning of the semester and less going out throughout the semester. So generally, this can be a great opportunity for you to jump in and just ask me questions about design, or even bring your design and we'll work on it. Generally in and about here, there's 1 or 2 people who show up. So just if you want extra value and lots of mentorship, there's a great opportunity. Then we've got our Zoom details. And then here's my website or my email. If you do have any questions, if you can't reach me on Canvas, feel free to email me direct. Happy to respond there. Okay. And then as we go down our list here in our discussion page, we've got open discussion. So you can put any discussion here. So Andrew threw in, this time he doesn't work for him. So he's wondering if he can switch to another group, which is totally fine. That's no problem there. And then we've got our first introduction. Now, as you can see down here, you won't see all of these. Some of these are extras that are unnecessary, but these are all of our future discussions. So basically, when you go to submit, you will click on lesson 1 and then take a look at the assignments that are due. So personal survey, design site, climate survey, and then the assignment resources, and then the rubric. Good to take a look at the rubric and get a sense of what's important to include. And then basically what you'll do is you'll click reply and you'll put in your assignment here. So for example, Jeff was in the previous class. He said, here's my report. It's on page 1 to 19. Here's a link, and that link will take me directly to the first slide of that week's assignment. Make sure to do that. That's important. With OSU, I have about 90 students, including regenerative living. I have about 140, including the clients I work with. I top at about 160. So I have a lot of people that I'm working with. So anything you could do to bring me right to your assignment is great, especially if you email me, just say, hey, Javan, I'm in the spring, summer OSU PDC Pro class. Question about this, just so I know where you're coming from. So basically you'll put that in, you'll link your assignment, and that's you submitting your assignment. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Again, only submit when you have all your assignments due. Just going to go back to my notes here. Now that it's up in front of me, I can look at them. Great. So we took a look at template, submit all. Again, as you're submitting your assignments, or as you're submitting that week's assignments, as we get into week 2 and 3 and 4, make sure to include all the previous assignments, because I go back, because permaculture is an iterative, it is a built upon process where I'm always going to go back and take a look at what you've done, especially your base maps and climate surveys. So make sure that those are in there. Again, resubmission is encouraged and welcome. Have fun. So folks will know this if they have kids. The more fun and the more play you can bring into this work, the more enjoyable it will be. The more you hold tightly to it and like, I'm going to learn permaculture, the less enjoyable it will be. So wherever and however you can, use yourself lightly, play lightly with your observations, come at this work as if you're 3.5 feet tall, a little kid going like, what's going on here? The wonder of the world and nature can open up to you, especially through permaculture, because it has such a beautiful lens to look through. So as much as possible, have fun with it. Grades are guideposts, not graves, so don't worry about it. Don't be frightened by the grades. I know we all were in school. Terrible way to learn. You've got an instructor here that doesn't really care about the grades, but is using them to help guide you. So really take it that way. Dialogue. So if I respond to you, which I will, I'll give video feedback, which allows me to give a lot of feedback and draw on your slides or point things out. You have the opportunity to reply if you want. You can text back. You can send messages back. Similarly, there's a point here within our course where you give peer feedback. We have probably the best group in the class because I take the international students. So we have students from all over the world, and you have a great opportunity to learn and make friends internationally. So I really encourage you to interact with your classmates. It's a great opportunity to do so. When you are ready to resubmit, or if you need to resubmit, there is a very specific way that I appreciate resubmissions. So when we get into resubmissions, what I'd like you to do, as Sky just did here, here's my resubmissions and here's everything I changed. So that's really important because I don't remark the whole assignment, or here, for example, thanks, Javan. I made the updates, slide 90, fixed the soil makeup, 91, added the ribbon jar test. Because I want you guys to get the most you can out of this. So I'm going to give you as much feedback as I possibly can. Cool. I'm going to take a quick pause. Any questions about that? Okay, not seeing anything. So one of the things that people can become obsessed about is rendering. This is not a class in rendering. If you follow the Google Slides, you can make really professional looking designs right off the bat because it's simple. One of the things that people do in this class is they try to complicate their maps. What you want to work towards is legible maps that give just enough information to be legible and no more. We want them to be clear and clean and simple and easy to read. Over time, if you want to develop a certain application approach within design, there's great secondary courses you can take. Daniel Halsley of United Designers is an Adobe fanatic and has worked with Adobe exclusively. I'm not. I don't really like paying subscription prices. So if I ever have to use Adobe, I use a knockoff called Affinity, AFFINITY, which you can usually get on every single sale day for 35 bucks. Personally, right now, the way that I design is I use Google Earth Pro. I bring in all the information I need there. I use Google Documents to create my report. And then if I have to make any designs, I prefer to use pen and paper. But because digital pen and paper is so much more efficient, I now use a 2018 iPad Pro with the 2nd gen pencil. And I use an application called Morpholio Trace. Morpholio Trace is, for me, a great program because it's built for architects and landscape architects by extension. And so you can bring in data externally. You can bring in terrain map data. It will scale automatically. If you bring in a drawing, you can scale it. It has stencils and templates that you can use in layers and move around. And generally, we all know how to use a pen and pencil. And so for me, I like drawing. And my approach to rendering has been, and in mentoring students now and clients for 15 years, is find a way of rendering that you enjoy or at least don't hate. So if you go into Google Slides and it feels like pulling nails out by just moving little digital pieces around, grab a piece of paper, grab a piece of grid paper, grab some transparency paper, and just draw, and make sure you take the photos of your maps in highlight, specifically outside works best, and then just import them as images into the portfolio. That's totally fine. But that's the way I design. My buddy Jamie, he works with something called Vectorworks. That's $3,000 a year, but it has all this automation. Another colleague of mine only uses pencil and paper. Another colleague of mine uses not Google SketchUp, Tremble SketchUp now, because they like doing 3-dimensional design. And then they use a program called Layout, which exports plans and bill of quantities for planting and for hardscape development. There's so many ways to go about it. Inkscape, GIMP. We have an entire section and spreadsheet I developed of all the different programs you can use. But again, don't spend the next 6 months also learning an application. I would just go with Google Slides or just go with pen and paper. Unless you're super savvy and you want to pick up something new, go for it. But we don't offer any training on that specifically. Questions about that? No questions. Thanks. Okay, cool. So site selection. So one of the things that people ask right off the bat is, what should I do for my site? How should I find it? What should I do with it? So a couple of pieces here. You must be able to visit your site multiple times. Having it in another country, having it 5 hours away, and you can only go once, it's not going to be as useful as having a site that you can go to multiple times. So much of what makes permaculture unique is that we deeply observe a site. We're on a site for a long time. We sit in relation with the abiotic, the non-living, and the biotic, the living factors there. We sense what the wind is like, where the rain comes from, where the rain moves on a site. We take a look and we take vegetative assays. We dig into the soil. It will be very hard on you and your work on this class if you can't get to your site. If you have a large property, you may want to shrink it down to just a small little area and just work on that tiny little area. Really take the time within this class to learn the process of permaculture instead of having such a large property that there's so much to design and develop. When you get into assignments like microclimate and zones, you're going to have to create microclimates and zones for your entire property. That's a lot of work. If your property is, an acre on 50, that's a lot less work. And then you can really focus on the work that you're doing. In terms of expectations, Post my first PDC, which was taken in August of 2009, took about 3 to 5 years before I felt comfortable designing. There's this unfortunate idea that you're going to take, a 6-month course or a 10-week course, and you're going to feel totally confident out of the gate only doing one design. It's not the case. It's going to take a long time. So the main thing I can say is have a process or a path or a design in which that you will have lots of mileage, lots of opportunities to design post this course or during this course. So there may be opportunity to start to designing during this course as well. David Shaw said a PDC is a great place to start, but a terrible place to stop. And I can't agree more. There is so much to learn and interact with and create that there's a lot to dive into. And people have called permaculture a great wardrobe or a great toolbox, that it can hold a lot of elements in it. And I agree with that. I don't view permaculture as a religion, nor do I deify the people in it. We're all people. And the thing is, you can miss out on who you could uniquely be within a permaculture context if you glorify Andrew or glorify Jeff Lawton or Robin Francis or Rosemary Morrow or Luby McIntyre or any of us. Really focus on the core of what permaculture is. It was about being specific to the niches within the ecology surrounding us. So really take it in and go, who am I as a person? This is something that I've specialized in over the last 15 years of my work, because I have a great love of the idea of we can design our lives. And so I have just as many life design clients as I do land design clients. And funny enough, this last course, I ended up getting 6 new clients from the students who were there, who wanted me to help guide them through how to niche themselves and develop a business. Diversify your toolbox and your mindset, and have there's 3 kind of mindsets. They're open mindset, closed mindset, and growth mindset. Open is I'm willing to learn. Closed, I don't want to learn. And growth is I'm willing to give up the things I know that I think are true for new knowledge that might progress me and evolve me mentally to a new place. So I would suggest really focus on that growth mindset. How to succeed in this class, ask for help. So if you're sitting there and you're beating your head after you've watched all the tutorials and you've looked at the examples, really come back and ask for help. I'm happy to jump on a Zoom call with anybody. I can usually fix anything on Google Slides in 20 minutes, or I can help you develop that mindset within a very short amount of time. This year, this course, after last course, I ran some base map clinics. They were really well received. So we're going to do those again. Watch for an email asking when you'd like to have those, because we're going to run them at a number of different times. Also, I just wanted to show everybody on the template here. Off to the right, a couple of years ago, I started to develop and host a whole database of previous student assignments. And so what this is both a spreadsheet of the course, the year, the session, the instructor, first name, and then this URL link, which will take you directly to their portfolio. And then all of the very specific information about their site, notes from the instructor, and then specifically what were the assignments that stood out. Now, if you want to search this, there's a little filter at the top right. And so we could put in the country. We could say, let's take a look at the examples from Iraq. There won't be too many. There's only one, but it's a great place to start. And if we go there, we can take a look at that. It's opening in a new window. So I'm just going to new share and bring that up here. So this was Jamie. He was just in the last little while. So this is a great place to start if you're looking for different resources for your site and you're having a hard time finding them. Also, you'll find that within the template document there, I've placed specific examples. We'll go to the base map to the right. So there will be examples specifically for you around this to take a look at. Some of them will have a lot of very specific ways of rendering, and some of them will just be hand-drawn. But this is also a nice way to take a look at some of the examples and just see what they've developed. Go down to the sector compass. Lots of great sector compasses that come in. We'll get into this later on, but there's 2 options for the sector compass. Student actually, I think it was actually Emmy, just a couple of sessions ago submitted this, and it was a much better version than what I'd come up with. So we're always updating the template, which is great. Cool. Questions about that? Straightforward.
I have
Happy.
one question about site
Yeah.
design, if
Yeah.
that's okay. Okay. I know you said that there might be like a maximum size for a site. Is
Yeah.
there a minimum?
No.
And I know this is about like incorporating principles, so it's not like the complexity or type of site that dictates how successful you can be in learning permaculture, but I'm also wondering if my circumstances might be slightly prohibitive.
So the smallest design I've seen is balcony.
Okay.
And I've also seen an indoor design because they were in such a cold latitude that they wanted to design for winter. And so they were designing off of the window space that was coming in. So you can design as small as you like because it really is principles based.
Okay. And do you think that, or maybe I can ask it more open-ended, um, how do you think they were able to be very successful in being curious and learning a lot when they kind of had constraining circumstances?
So the great thing is about design is that constraints are our friends. We seek constraints out right from the beginning. We want to see constraints. We want to see where does the sun stop? We want to see where does the water stop? We want to see where do the plants not grow? All of those give us great constraints. Same thing with doing your client interview. When you start to ask your clients, I don't want this, I want that, this is off the table. I ask clients must-haves, nice-to-haves, because I aim for the must-haves, and if we can include the nice-to-haves, fantastic. But all of that creates these three circles. So there's three circles for me in design. The first circle is intrinsic characteristics of a site. So what does the site naturally want to do without my involvement? Where does the water flow? Where does the sun come? What kind of soils, plants, animals? What is the feel of the site in certain areas? Sometimes when you're on a site, that sixth sense of yours, you walk into it, you're like, I don't like this. Nothing about this is enjoyable. All of that is to take in information. So that's the intrinsic characteristics. The second circle is the client's wants, needs, and budget, ability to do the work or have somebody hire, etc. So it's all about them. What are they doing? How are they understanding a site, etc. And then there's this third circle, which is what is the regulatory climate that you live in? This is not something that Bill Mollison talked a lot about. It's not something that Jeff Lawton talked about. And a lot of the Jeff Lawton students are responsible for putting in designs that were not within the legal framework of their respective sites with clients who were kind of relying on them to advise them correctly. There's a saying in permaculture that the burden is on the designer. And this is where, for those of you that are on one side or the other of the invasive species conversation, it's really about you as designer going, what is this plant and what is it going to do if I place it here? It's not about what's that permaculture plant and then I'm going to plant it here and then it'll be everywhere and then it'll be somebody else's problem. It's about what am I placing here? So that regulatory climate is important. So intrinsic characteristics, client wants, needs, and budget. What are they bringing? Resources, and then regulatory climate. And within those three, there's the sweet spot of design. And if I did a design and you did a design, it would look different. That's the cool thing about this process. It's always going to look a little bit different because there's a kind of a fourth circle that comes into it, which is the flavor we bring as designers. It's inherent to the whole piece. What I look at and see is going to be based upon my experience, which is why I want you to have an open mind and an open toolbox. I don't subscribe to swales, nor hugelkultur, nor keyline design, or natural sequence farming. What I have done is I've trained in these things so I can go, I wonder what is the best solution for this specific conversation. And sometimes the design you make is very simple. Sometimes it's one or two little levers. Maybe it's a water lever or a plant lever, or sometimes just moving something. We worked in this great farm in Santiago de Cuba, and they had a banana plantation on a pretty large urban lot right beside the house when the vegetable garden was a good, you couldn't see it. It didn't take long to walk because it was still an urban site, but you couldn't see it. And one of the only things we did in that design is chop down the banana plantation because banana is a herb, not a tree. It has a corm, which is a root ball. You can dig that up and replant that. And then we brought the vegetable garden over. That was really it. That's all that really happened on that site, and made some inroads so that way the water from the house would feed the vegetable garden. So sometimes it's just about one or two small design elements that you add in. What I would like to avoid is any of you becoming permaculture shoppers, which is you're walking down the permaculture store and you're grabbing a herb spiral and grabbing a swale and you're just plopping it onto a landscape. My success would be if you look critically at a site and go, okay, I want to start at the top of the landscape. I want to see where the water flows. I want to see where I can catch and store it. And I'm open to the how of that because I'm focused on the principle aspect of it, not the thing of it. And that's that sort of values-based decision making. So in a small site, and this is the way I teach, I go from first principles always back down to the question. What I would do if I was working on a small site or, just a window is I would go, okay, what do I have to work with here? We have a heated interior, which is great because basically we're at tropic or semi-tropical warmth. What kind of interaction does the client want with this space? Is it me? Is it somebody else? How much water can I bring to this space? What do I have to worry about where the water goes and the drainage of that, if it's inside a house or outside a house? We just had a great design from somebody in Amsterdam, and they did the courtyard of their community building, which they recognized would probably not get passed, but they did it anyways. And they're still going forward with the presentation. And it sounds like they're going to get a couple of trees in, which is great. But they really focused on their balcony, which was just like 8 feet by 3.5 feet, a couple of meters by a meter. It wasn't very big. And their big focus was, okay, let's grow culinary herbs. Let's have a place to put my compost. Let's do vermicomposting, which is composting with worms. Let's see if I can grab some of the water that comes down the downspout, redirect it into these beds, which they decide to work with wicking beds, which is where we have a water reservoir at the bottom and a little soil wick that comes into it and sucks it up. If you want more detailed information, I did 2 great interviews with 2 excellent wicking bed designers on my YouTube channel. But that then becomes the specifics of the design. So start with first principles, start with what you have, start with those constraints, and then use those to find those little leverage points to help the clients with what they need.
Okay, that's really helpful. So thank you.
Awesome.
And then speaking of the invasive species debate, I don't know how this is so timely, but someone, NYT posted an article or an op-ed about it today. So I just put the link in the chat. I know it's a
Amazing.
hot topic.
April 8th. Look at that. Fantastic. Oh, cool. Thank you
I've
so much
not
for
read it. Sometimes I'm a headline person, so I've not read it yet, but so I'm not promoting it, but I'll give it a read later.
Yeah, so interesting. So interesting. Yeah, people have a really hard time when you start bringing the invasive species comment to people. That's really when you start to see where people lie on it. It's a fun conversation to have. Jean Daniel, did you have a question there, sir?
Yes, actually, I kind of have the opposite problem, or it's the site that I have is 100 acres, and it's kind of big. And as you mentioned, it's maybe not ideal for first time work. Well, it's kind of for a restoration purpose as well, and there's a lot of forest that is kind of the design would be to keep the forest in place, actually, which is kind of a measure of not doing much, but still having ecosystemic advantages and stuff like that. And another part is kind of 50 acres that is a clear-cut forest, recent clear-cut that would be acquired. And I think for regeneration and restoration tests, it would be a nice sample. So I wonder what's your idea on that, or should I kind of just shrink it and use a quarter of it, or yeah.
Yeah, great question. So you have a large parcel, about 100 acres. It's really focused on a forest and forest restoration, if I heard you correctly. Probably what I would do is I would do the observation assignment, which is basically up to week 5 for the majority of the site, or as much of the site as you feel comfortable doing. But really with the mindset that you're going to have a test plot. So you're going to have a small area where you're going to test some of the ideas and the conversations you're going to apply. And I recommend this for all design. Have a small area where you're going to design and work upon. And if that's a quarter of an acre, 2, that's fine. The size really doesn't matter, because what you want to do is apply and see if you can apply those principles in a good way. So I would focus, if it is about forestry, I would focus on assessing the site as large and then working on a small area, probably closer to wherever the center of human initiative is, wherever you're coming in, so that way you can get to it quick, so you can make your observations. And then if it ever feels like it's too much to observe the whole site, which it probably will be, shrink it down to that area, so that way you can really nail the process on that site. Does that make sense?
Yeah, depending also on the requirements for the course. I know there are many assignments, so depending on the load of work, and should probably focus maybe more. And the thing is that a part of where I live, actually, it's half of it is my property, and so it's already developed somewhat. So I've tested and experimented some stuff, you know, and already have a garden, and so this part is kind of to confirm if it's done well, or if we should have some adjustments or some tricks, you know, to upgrade the place. And the other part may be more into like new design stuff, and experiment with water earthworks or stuff like that, since there's a lot of disturbance already, and it's kind of the mindset behind that. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, it sounds like a great idea. Hold on, folks. I'm just going to open up a window here. Toby, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Am I audible? Please, can you confirm that?
Yeah, you're audible. We can hear you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, thank you, sir. I want to appreciate this class. So I have few questions to ask. I'm Toby from Nigeria, and I've once know about permaculture, but from what I've learned that I should engage all the 12 principles of permaculture. Now, coming from where you just said that you only need to understand what your client needs or what the site needs, they may be quite different. Does that mean I might not have to use the whole principle or the whole, for instance, let's take swale. For instance, you said you don't do it, but what I was taught is that I have to do it. So I want to have a clear clarification about this. That for every site, for instance, is it necessary that I run all through the ethics, the principles of permaculture? And secondly, is my site personally is quite a bit.
Toby, are you still there? I think we lost Toby. Well, I can answer Toby's question, and he can come back and take a look at this, and we'll just keep an eye if he decides to pop back in. Do you need to apply all 12 principles of what David Holmgren came up with, his principles for a site to be a permaculture site? No, you don't. Is it useful? Yeah. So generally, I tend to pass a site through those principles, and they're always on my mind. They're always at hand to be applied upon a site. There's a couple of great card sets created by Delvin Silkinson that he's made free, so that way you can download them and either have them digitally or print them out yourself. But they're just great reminders to kind of think about, how might I apply, or how might I catch and store? I'm working with a life design client right now who's mentoring under me with values-based decision making. And our conversation just before this was all about, he just did a brilliant presentation. he specializes in values-based decision-making for communities. So that way the person can know what their values are and know what the community's values are to make sure that they're in the right community. A lot of people want to work with and develop communities these days. And one of the things we talked about is he just did a brilliant big talk, kind of a TED talk for him, about what it means to be in values-based decision-making, what the process is, and got a lot of great feedback. And the iron's hot right now. So how do you catch and store that energy that is coming towards him? So I'm always having those types of design conversations on those principles at hand. There you go. Thanks, Bridget. At permaculturedesign.earth design deck. Thank you so much. That's awesome. Nice. I like when people are posting like that. That's awesome. So that's what I would say is have that conversation, have that alive with you. Doesn't look like Toby came back. Okay, so we talked about working on the designer's mind. One of the things that a colleague and I chatted about years ago and kind of had a giggle is that, you know, the most productive part of the cow's life is arguably chewing cud. And so a lot of that is working on the design and thinking about the design. So we get a little bit of frustrated students who aren't used to coming to the same conclusions over and over and calling it progress. But when you come into the templates, you're going to see this final slide called a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And sometimes through the lens of that assignment, so through the sector lens and through the microclimate lens, you may come to a similar weakness. That's great. We want to verify our design through this process. So that's actually a real positive aspect of this conversation, is working with that aspect. We talked about the burden is on the designer, ask questions. The other thing that I would recommend is reach out to somebody else in the class after you've gone through the introductions and ask them if they'd like to be a learning buddy. I still do this in all the classes I'm in. Hey, I'd like to have a conversation with you every other week. Jump on a call for 30 minutes. I just want to talk about what's going on, see what's going on for you. It's a great way to deepen your learning. So you can do that with one person, or if you find a bunch of people in the same place, create a local study group. Again, that final design, August 26th, 9 a.m. We walk through posting, we walk through commenting. So I've got a couple of minutes left here, just a few. I'm probably going to go 10 or 15 minutes over because I do want to get into this final conversation here. So if you do have to leave, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm really looking forward to seeing all your design work in the class. If you need any help whatsoever, please email me, javan@allpointsdesign.ca, or email me through Canvas. We'll meet here every 2 weeks at the same time. I don't think, you know, our course doesn't go over a time switch, so we'll be the same. But have fun. If you get stuck, reach out. We can usually solve things really quickly. And almost every question under the sun has been answered in the last 9 years of me doing this for OSU. This is my 70th PDC. So I've had a fair amount of time having conversations. And what I really want you folks to do is I want you to be as successful as you can in the time that you're here. So know that I want to give you the keys to the kingdom if possible. So I want to talk about this one assignment that I used to teach when I was teaching live courses. And after I moved to more online work, I still do with students, and it's super useful. So basically what I would suggest is if you're digital note taker, make 2 columns. If you're hard copy, take 2 pages. On one side, write fire at the top. On the other side, write compost and fire. So compost and fire. One side says fire, one side says compost. And as you go through the course, as you go through the different sections, I would say probably week by week, take time to use this as a little bit of a reflection period, kind of a journaling period. And as you go through that section, as you go through, let's say, water, you're going to find things like rainwater harvesting. So rainwater harvesting for me really fires me up. Potable water filtration, I really like that as well. That's a big deal to me. I really appreciate that kind of approach. I love passive earthworks. So things like dams, swales, terraces, raised beds, hugelkultur, that really fires me up. If there's something about water that doesn't fire you up, so maybe it's gray water. Maybe using water after it comes out of your sinks or your shower or your washing machine, that's what's called gray water. Comes out of your toilet, that's called black water. Maybe it doesn't fire you up. Maybe it's not something that you're really interested in. What's great about this is that by the end of this course, because again, it's a buffet, it's a survey course, you're going to get a lot of little interesting pieces. You're going to have a list of things that you may want to check into next. So it's a great opportunity to go over the entire course and just go, okay, so what is really exciting to me about this? And sometimes it might be really specific. You might, like a student last semester, and a client I'm working with, they've been in trucking for years, and they really want to use these usually destructive elements, and they want to create a business that uses them in a good way. And so our focus right now is to transition them from trucking and excavating perimeter drains into rain gardens, into full hydration landscapes. So that can be a great way for you to start that process. So that's one little design exercise that I would recommend people do. Any questions about that? Pretty straightforward. Not too weird. Cool. All right, so design process, I talked about my design process. And if anybody's interested in that, we can always take some time during office hours to talk about it. And then these last couple of pieces here. So I got into permaculture because I wanted to have a positive effect on the world around me. Making sure that my labor goes towards something that betters everyone is core to me. It's a fundamental. If it doesn't happen, I can't do the work. It just doesn't work for me. And so when I came to permaculture, I came out of a natural building internship. I was learning how to build with clay, sandstone, straw, cob, straw bale, light clay infill, clay plasters. I'd had about 13 years of experience working with my dad as a construction assistant, also called slave labor for anybody who's worked with their parents before. And I needed to do something of value. And I came to permaculture, and I was told the prime directive of permaculture, which is to take responsibility for your needs and for those of your children. The 3 ethics: take care of the earth, it's our prime asset; take care of the people, they take care of the earth; and then to set limits to consumption and redistribute surplus. And I remember that day raising my hand, kind of quaking, as the Quakers do, because you should only speak when you have something actually to say. And I said to the instructor, this is the closest thing to a guideline I can imagine following for the rest of my life. And that night in my journal, I wrote, I'd rather fail at permaculture than pretty much succeed at anything else. And I've been very blessed to be able to do as much work as I've done. I've been very, very poor and broke and depressed. When I started all this work, I had eco-despair, as diagnosed by a psychologist. And he said, that's where you think the world is going for naught. And I was like, I don't think it, I know it. These are things that I don't have to read about. I know what's going on. And it was through the work of permaculture that I slowly started to take action. And there's a cool thing about action. Action dispels despair. And it was in that process I was able to apply myself systematically through this work and able to develop business through this work. And the first PDC I ran, I made about 19 cents an hour. So it hasn't always been super successful at the beginning, but over time, I've developed a way of being within this that has really brought me back to the core of what permaculture is. Permaculture is about a story for humanity. It's a story of hope. It's a story that we can be better than we have in the past. We can actually be beneficial as we are negative. And within that story, there's an opportunity for you to deeply understand landscape, deeply understand ecology, and remember, regardless of the fact that Webster says nature is everything that isn't human, we are a part of ecology. We're just another animal in the conversation. We tend to think that we're the best and the brightest. If you read history, we don't look it. So it's really about kind of giving up that which with going back to that growth mindset, getting out of the mental gated communities of it must be this way, permaculture must only be this. I'm really saying this is a tool in my toolbox that I'm going to pick up and use, and I'm going to apply in a thoughtful way to improve what I think I can do for ecology and what I think I can do for the clients or myself within it, because it's always a learning process. Okay, so I'm not 50 minutes over. I'm only 5 over, which is good. And that's kind of the end and the end of the conversation here for me. As usual, Any questions, feel free to reach out, javan@allpointsdesign.ca. You'll always have an opportunity at the end of each slides. There's a Q&A doc. So if you have a specific question about a specific aspect within your slide set, I can always address that. And last I can say is just have fun. Permaculture has been such a brilliant boon to my life. I've met some of the most incredible people. I've gone to some of the most incredible places. It's allowed me to develop a skill set that produces service, but also a skill set that produces product. I've been able to run a nursery. I ran a farm. I grew and sold vegetables. I created medicinal tinctures for a while, which was very lucrative and would love to do that again. And it's been just super fun. So it's so great to welcome you all into the movement. And I'm really looking forward to calling most of you, if not all of you, colleagues by the end of the course, which you can do after you get your certificate. So thanks very much. If anybody has any questions or anything to add, that'd be great. At the end, I really like asking what are people taking away from our calls. So if you can stay on a bit and just let me know what was useful for you today or what you're taking away, that'd be great.
Hi, I can start. I just want to give you a big shout out, first of all. I think this is by far the best organized and best structured online course I've ever taken. Your template is so detailed and the guidance is so complete. I'm really, really impressed. So thank you for all the work you've put in over quite a few years, I guess. And yeah, I usually come up with a ton of questions. You've laid it out so well that I can't even come up with questions at the moment. So I'm excited to dive a bit deeper into the content because I'll probably have plenty of questions then. I'm super interested in especially rainwater catch and good water use, since I feel that that's what I have the least understanding of. So I'm very excited about that coming through. And thanks for today. I won't be able to make most of the weeks, which is not because I don't want to, it's because of work schedule stuff and my time difference. So know that I very much appreciate you giving office hours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bridget. It's a pleasure. Yeah, looking forward to it. Awesome. What did everybody else take away from the call today? What are you leaving with that feels like it's valuable?
I've been looking for a site for, I don't know if you can hear me.
I can, yeah.
Okay. I've been looking for a site for weeks now, and I just realized that I have one. So I'm happy about that.
Huzzah! That's great. Awesome.
I was looking for a big, like not for a big, but for a piece of land and everything. But I mean, I'm in a house with a garden, so I'll use that.
Perfect. Yeah, use what you have. That's great.
I think one thing I'm taking away is something I've heard from a few others, is that one gripe or qualm they have with permaculture is that it can't be scaled. And I think I'm taking away two things. One, that maybe sometimes people tend to critique something just because the word got popular or has come with buzzwords, so they try to find flaws in it, even if it's not the case. And two, that this is just my hunch, but it's kind of confirmed now, this really is like a systems design thinking process. And anytime you're applying principles or values, those things can obviously be scaled. It's not just about the actual physical outcome outcome that you see. So that's kind of what I'm taking away. And it's kind of just greater permission to dive really deep into this.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, it's Larry Santoyo, who was a special forces officer with the LAPD, I said multiple times, you don't use permaculture, you don't do permaculture, you use permaculture in what you do. So the way you approach this, how you approach this can be just as much permaculture as anything else. In Cuba, they both hold up the permaculture practitioner and the permaculture promoter. So in Cuba, they've got this two delineations. There's people who live in the cities, they don't have space to grow, they don't consider themselves active in permaculture, but they promote it, so they do. They think, oh no, this is part of it. This is placemaking and gathering and gathering the tribe, so to speak. The other one was years ago in Permaculture Voices 1, I gave a presentation about applying permaculture to oneself to design one's life as best one can in their situation. And at the end of it, I had this guy come up to me who was 10, 20 years older than me. He goes, I think you saved my life. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, years ago, I took a PDC and the guy said, everyone should compost. It's just mandatory. It has to happen. And so I've tried to compost for a year. I tried to commercial compost for a year and I just sucked at it. I don't like it. I don't like doing it. I'm a mechanic. My dad was a mechanic. I've grown up around cars my whole life. And I think you've just given me permission to be a permaculture mechanic. I'll use permaculture in what I do. I've seen that you can train mushrooms to eat oil. And what a cool thing it would be to develop a product that would eat the oil that comes out of the cars that I usually have to throw away. And that was one of those great turning points for me. And it was really early in what I was doing that is really about taking this idea, how can we be better than we've been and apply it systematically? And so this is where you'll get people who have worked permaculture into fiber sheds, permaculture into corporations like Terragenesis, who are working on what's called supply networks versus supply chains. There's all of these really cool little examples of people who are doing things really specific. I just got reached out by a client of mine who was working in Bahrain, who is trying to create an AI permaculture assistant that can help people increase their knowledge by teaching them as they're going around their garden. Great. Like, how many ways can we get more people to be involved with their ecology, know that they come from this ecology, know that we're on this great space station called Earth. It's hurtling through the cosmos with a bunch of talking monkeys on it. And we keep trying to dismantle all the life support systems, thinking we're going to end up better for it, instead of, well, how can we just work on the life support systems in any small way, be it social connections, ecological connections, doesn't matter. It's always about improving that conversation. So yeah, wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that from you. Anybody else want to chime in before we say our goodbyes? We've got some people saying, thanks so much. That's awesome. Thanks, Amy. Anybody else? What are you taking away from the call today?
As somebody who's been away from school for a long time, I'm feeling very lucky to be in your group. This seems like I'm very grateful. It's awesome.
That's great, man. Yeah, glad to hear it. I just recently started a master's and it's very different in the formalized education service. And I wouldn't say necessarily positive. So I'm glad this speed works for you. That's awesome. All right, folks. Pleasure to meet y'all. Hopefully we get a chance to chat more. Generally, it won't be so didactic, just me chatting nonstop. It'll mostly be posting questions before and me talking about it and us going back and forth. Again, if you're having issues with anything, feel free to reach out. Generally, we can solve anything pretty easily. And then be on the lookout for the base map clinics. If mapping feels totally alien to you and you're kind of dreading it, we can definitely go step by step. And the clinics are really about me taking an issue you're having with your base map, which will be it'll be almost 3 weeks away. So if you are having a big problem, we can do that. Or if you're not feeling you want to do that in a big public space, I get that. I don't like looking stupid in front of other people. Just reach out and we can jump on a Zoom call and I'll walk you through it. So thanks so much. It was a pleasure. This will be up within 24 hours. It's usually up in a couple hours, but it'll be up in 24 hours if you want to come back and look at anything. And again, that whole listing will be in the discussion page. If you want to say goodbye and unmute, good time to do it. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.